So Pat Narduzzi says they may or may not have a decision to make at quarterback on Thursday night when Pitt hosts Boston College at Acrisure Stadium, but I don't think there's much of a decision to make at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's pretty obvious what Pitt should do, and I think they're going to do it, but who can tell with this group? We'll talk about it on today's Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to the Morning Pitt. Welcome to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt Sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com. You want to get your Pitt Sports news, you want to get your Pitt Sports coverage, it's right there at Panther-Lair.com. And if you want to talk with other Pitt fans about it, that's right there at Panther-Lair.com as well. I think it's the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find. It's not always friendly, but sports does that to us, right? Not always happy and everything's great because not always, everything's not always great. But no matter how up or down you may be, the one thing you always like to do is talk to other Pitt fans about it, and that's the place to do it, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And, of course, our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we put all of our video content. We have these daily Morning Pitt videos Monday through Friday, our weekly live stream that we do every Wednesday night. That'll be tonight at 8:30 p.m., me and Jim Hammett talking to you for an hour about Pitt Sports. We have our live post-game show. We'll do that after the game tomorrow night. Who knows what time that's going to start? Probably like midnight. I'd like to think it'll start before midnight, but it really might not start before midnight, in which case we're going to be up really late talking about Pitt Boston College, but we'll be doing it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have post-game press conferences, weekly interviews, all those kinds of videos, all right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video. Really, click the like button. I mean, that would be huge. We're like really close to crossing over, passing another, another mark on the subscriber, subscriber tallies here on YouTube. And so if you could hit that like button, I'd really appreciate it. Well, the likes actually, I'm talking about the likes. The like would be great for this video, but also subscribe. Subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like I said, we're close to passing another benchmark. We'd really like to get there. We want to keep it going. I mean, we have no end target in sight, but we'd like to pass some of these smaller benchmarks along the way. It'd be great if you could do it. So like this video and subscribe. And that way you'll never miss any of our Pitt video content right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So Pat Narduzzi says that they don't know who they're going to play at quarterback. I mean, rewind the tape, right? Roll the tape back. We're not going to watch the tape. We're going to roll the tape back and go back to Saturday. Pitt's at Yankee Stadium. They're taking on Syracuse. Christian Veyer commits his third turnover in the second half. Basically on like the first play of the fourth quarter, I think it was, and it leads to a touchdown. All three of his turnovers led to Syracuse touchdowns. And Pat Narduzzi makes the change. He brings in Nate Yarnell. Yarnell, first drive, I think it was like a 3-and-out. Should have the stat. I do have the stats right in front of me. I say I should. The first drive was a 3-and-out. Three plays, 5 yards. But the next drive, they actually go 45 yards on 3 plays, couple passes to Malcolm Epps. They're gaining some yards there. They're moving along, and they get all the way to the Syracuse 35 before Rodney Hammond is ruled to have fumbled. Syracuse gets the ball back and runs the final 4:21 off the clock. And they came out of that game. Pat Narduzzi was asked, who's going to be your starting quarterback on Thursday night? And he said, we'll look at the tape and find out. And right there, that jumped off the screen to me. I mean, that was a screaming headline of like, hey, there's something notable to keep an eye on here. Because typically Narduzzi would just almost blindly endorse the starter, say Christian's still our guy, we're going to go with Christian and all this stuff. He's just got to do a better job taking care of the ball. But the fact that he left the door open by saying, we'll take a look at the tape and find out, leads me to believe... For starters, it doesn't necessarily lead me to believe that his first thought is, yeah, I really don't know who's going to be the starter. I got to look at the tape and decide. But I do think in his mind, he was not, 100% not convinced that Christian Veyer should start again, at least on Thursday night coming out of the Syracuse game. I think he was really frustrated with the turnovers in the second half. I think he was frustrated with how those 3 Veyer turnovers, 1 pick six, and then 2 fumbles on read plays where he tried to pull it and maybe he should have, done the give. or pull it, fine, if that's the right decision to make, but you have to secure the ball a little bit better. Both of those end up leading to touchdowns. Syracuse gets the ball at the Pitt 48 after the first fumble. They drive 52 yards for a touchdown. They get the pick 6 from like the 23 or something like that and get a touchdown. And then they get the ball at the Pitt 34. And they end up driving 2 plays, 34 yards for that final touchdown. And that's how a game that was, 13-10, what was it at halftime? It was 13-7. 13-7 at halftime ends up going down as a 28-13 win. All of Syracuse's touchdowns came after turnovers. Now, you want to say, oh, defense doesn't need to give up a 52-yard drive. Okay. You can make a case for that, but a pick 6 and a fumble at the 34 gave Syracuse pretty favorable field position, and in one case gave Syracuse just 6 points right off the bat, 7 points right off the bat. And I think the turnovers rankled Narduzzi as much as anything because he will suffer a lot of things in terms of bad offense. I think we've learned this over the years from Pat Narduzzi. He will put up with a lot of bad offense, and we've seen him put up with a lot of bad offense, and we've seen him defend a lot of bad offense. But turnovers, that's a bridge too far. That's just going. That's not the right idiom to use there, right metaphor to use there. But it's too much. He cannot abide turnovers. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I think being a defensive-minded head coach, I think most coaches don't put up with turnovers very well because they feel like you're just giving the game away when the offense hands the ball to the other team's defense, either through a fumble or an interception or whatever it is. Most coaches get pretty rankled about that, and I think defensive coaches are particularly prone to it, and I think Pat Narduzzi is certainly one of those. And so he'll put up with bad offense, he'll put up with bad offensive play, but he can't put up with the turnovers, and the turnovers are what ultimately, brought Nate Yarnell onto the field. At that point, after the third turnover touchdown, it's a 15-point game. It's a two-score game. Syracuse scored that final touchdown with 14:19 to go. There's still 14 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. It's highly unlikely that you're going to win at that point. It's highly unlikely you're going to get enough stops on defense at that point. But it is a 2-score game. The game's not entirely out of reach, not mathematically at least. You could get 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion in a quarter. That's not inconceivable. And so going with Yarnell in that situation, I think, was a direct reflection on Christian Veilleux. Now, interesting exchange on Monday. Interesting exchange with Pat Narduzzi at his weekly press conference on Monday. Jerry DePaula asked him, who's going to be your starting quarterback on Thursday night? And Narduzzi's first response was, I don't talk injuries. Injuries? Who said anything about injuries? Who said anything about anybody being hurt? Who said anything about the quarterbacks being hurt? Because I went back just to review in case I missed something, and there's no clear indication on the TV broadcast that Christian Veilleux got hurt on his second fumble. He is frustrated. He stays down on the field, seemingly out of disgust with his own play and his own sloppy ball security. But he gets helped up off his teammates, help him, come on, get up, man, let's go. And he, walks or jogs off the field, and they show him later on the sideline just walking around. There's no clear indication that he was receiving medical attention or anything like that to point toward an injury. So weird insinuation from Narduzzi to give some thought that there's an injury situation at play here, unless Nate Yarnell got hurt, and that's who he was referring to. And, I didn't really see anything like that or hear any talk about that as well. But ultimately, Narduzzi says we'll make that decision on Thursday night. Well, he said we'll find out on Thursday night, because I asked him, is that going to be a game time decision? Are you going to see how guys are in the pregame warmups and decide there? Are you going to decide sooner? He said, I don't know. Maybe sooner. Maybe warmups. Maybe in the locker room. I don't know. Fine. You don't want Boston College to know whether it's Christian Veilleux or Nate Yarnell. You don't want to have any kind of advantage there, even though can't imagine the offense really changes all that much when you go with Veilleux or Yarnell. So, sure, whatever. You want to play coy. You want to keep it secret. He did say something like, it's good with Boston College. They know who the quarterback is going to be. They know it's going to be Thomas Castellanos. And, so at least they don't have to worry about preparing for multiple quarterbacks. So maybe he really does take this stuff seriously, that it really does matter. He really believes that it's a considerable advantage or disadvantage. That information about which quarterback is going to play. But here's my thing. How is this even a decision? How is it even a decision? I don't want to give up on Christian Veer. I don't mean to entirely do that. I think he's young. I think he's still inexperienced. I think he's made his first 5 career starts over the last 5 games. So it's not like he's a veteran who I think we have a big enough sample size to judge on or to render a final judgment on, because we are going to judge on the sample size that's already existed. And here's the thing about the sample size that's already existed. These stats, sit down and hold on to your butts. You might have read this in an article we wrote on Panther-Lair.com yesterday, but I didn't see it get too much play. But Christian Veer, 5 starts. All right, in these 5 starts, including the Louisville game that he won, 5 starts, he has completed 52.2% of his passes. He's averaged 6.6 yards per attempt. He's thrown 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Okay, I should have some kind of visual aid to put up here to compare. So maybe I'll write it down on paper here, and you can see it. 52.2. All right. Okay. 52.2%. Okay. 6.6 yards per attempt. All right. Got it. 6 TDs, 6 interceptions. That's Christian Veer's 5-game stat line. His stats from his 5 games as a starter. I'm going to put up another set of numbers to compare. Okay, hold on. Oh, bear with me here. If you read the article yesterday, you know what this is going to be. And you might have already guessed anyway. All right, I gave you Veer's numbers. Here's another set of numbers. Okay. This is Veer, 52.2% completion, 6.6 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. This set of numbers down here, 50.9% completion, 7.3 yards per attempt, 6 TDs, 3 interceptions. You know what this is, right? It's Phil Drakovic's stat line through 5 starts. Look at those numbers. This set of numbers on the bottom got a guy benched. This set of numbers on the top, if it was enough to bench the last guy, who I think we were all in agreement it needed to be benched. I mean, I've said going back to the halftime of the West Virginia game that it would have made that change. If it was good enough to get one guy benched, what's the difference here? I'll tell you what the difference is. Slightly better completion percentage, twice as many interceptions, plus fumbles. He's fumbled like 3 times. And I don't want to bag on Christian Veer. I think there are promising signs. I think the one thing, and we've said this, I think, over the last couple of weeks, one thing that sort of separates him from Phil Dracovic is those flashes that he has shown, those plays he has made, where he's made a big time passes that I don't think Phil Dracovic ever really showed the ability to make. Although, he had a couple of nice touchdown passes. He threw 3 pretty nice touchdown passes against Cincinnati, if you recall. And all of his interceptions were really contained over, in one game. All 3 of his picks were in the West Virginia game. Whereas Christian Veer, 6 interceptions have come in the last, obviously in the last 5 games. And I want to say all in the last 3, actually, because he had 4 against Notre Dame, 1 against Florida State, and one against whoever they played, Syracuse. But he's shown those flashes. He's made those big plays where you're like, wow, look at that arm talent. Look how quick the ball comes out. Look how sharp that throw was. Man, he made a great play there. But these numbers make it pretty clear that he's not making enough of those great plays. He's not doing enough. He's not getting the ball to the playmakers enough. He's completing just like 1%, 1.3% more of his passes than Dracovic, and averaging 0.7 yards per attempt less than Dracovic, in addition to doubling up on interceptions and matching the same number of touchdowns. I would not sit here and say that Christian Veer has been as bad as Phil Dracovic, but what I would say is Let's just look at the production. Set the eye test aside and look at the production. Now, Jovic had one of his starts was against Wofford. Okay? And Vare has started against Notre Dame and Florida State. We'll have to take that into consideration. We'll have to take that, that's fair. We shouldn't act like this is entirely apples to apples here. I mean, you're talking about Wofford, Cincinnati, who finally won a game for the first time since they beat Pitt, and West Virginia, who's fine. They're bowl eligible, but not, or they're almost bowl eligible. I forget if they're bowl eligible or not. They're either 5 or 6 wins. It doesn't matter. They're not great. Virginia Tech's not great. And these were the teams that Jovic was starting against when he only threw 3 interceptions over the course of those 5 games. And Vare has faced, a top 4 team, a top 10 or top 15 team in Notre Dame, depending on how you want to put them up there, and Louisville, a top 10 team. I mean, he has faced a far tougher slate than Jovic. So we'll take that into consideration. But when I go into this game tomorrow night, I think it's Yarnell time. I think it's Yarny time. I really do. And I'll tell you why. I think you can very much, if you are Pat Narduzzi, you can make a case of saying, and I think you can say this to the players, and I think you can say this publicly. You can say it to the coaches of, look, we're not giving up on Christian. We've got all off season to work with Christian and develop Christian, and we would like to get him in games too. But I would like to see what Nate does in a real game, that he starts and goes from 0 to 60 minutes, not speed necessarily. He's made one start. It was the Western Michigan game with a very boiled down playbook, just running the ball, not taking many chances in the passing game or anything like that. And then since then it's been, a couple snaps against UCLA, a couple snaps against Notre Dame, and the end of the fourth quarter against Syracuse. I think if you're Narduzzi, you can say, look, I want to see him in a real game where he makes the start, where he's the guy. I want to see what he can do. Because the reality is he's completed close in those 4 different situations. He's attempted 20 some passes. He's completed like close to 70% of them for 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns and no picks. Well, okay, I mean, you could talk about sample size. You could talk about who he was playing, the situations he was in. That's fine. Well, let's see him in a real situation. Let's see him in a real game. Let's see him go out in prime time on a Thursday night at Acrisure Stadium, start the game, play the full game, and who knows? Who knows? Maybe he'll be good. Maybe he'll do better than 52 or 51% of his completion percentage. Maybe he'll do better than 6 or 7 yards per attempt. Maybe he won't throw any interceptions or turn the ball over. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to shoot for? And you can still heavily emphasize the run game. You can try to make it a run-heavy game plan, but see what happens if Nate Yarnell leads you. And we're not advocating for somebody who's never played before. I'm not saying, look, man, just put Jake Frannell out there. Just put David Lynch out there. Just put Ty Diefenbach out there. I'm not saying that. Give some opportunities to Nate Yarnell, some real live opportunities, and find out what he can do. Find out if he can hang in that situation. Maybe you'll be surprised. Maybe he'll go out there and light it up. And you'll be like, holy crap, we might have found our quarterback. And then you give him another start against Duke, and you see what he can do on the road in an ACC game, and maybe he has a great game there. You say, holy crap, we might have found our quarterback. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe he stinks. Maybe he throws 4 interceptions in the first half. Well, you're just back to where you started from anyway. You go to Vare in the second half. You're reassured that Vare was the right option over Yarnell. And either way, you go into the offseason looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal. You're not any further behind than you would have been if you give it a try. So that's what I would do. I think there's a chance Pat Narduzzi will do it. I'm not entirely convinced, though. But I guess we'll find out tomorrow night. Listen, tonight, make sure you tune in here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com at 8:30 p.m. for the Panther-Lair show. Jim and I will be here for the live stream. We'll take your comments and questions. We'll talk about who we would start at quarterback tomorrow night, and I'll get your thoughts on it as well. You can also leave a comment here on YouTube about who you would like to start or who you think should start. We would definitely like to hear from you on that. And then, of course, we got our live post-game show after tomorrow night's game, probably starting around midnight. I hope it starts around midnight or sometime earlier. I hope it doesn't go later than that, but hopefully it starts at midnight. That would be nice, but we'll see. We'll see what the gods have in favor for us, or have in store for us, of how long that game goes. But thanks for tuning in today. Let me know who you would start at quarterback tomorrow night. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. We'll talk about it tonight on the live show, and of course over at Panther-Lair.com. So Panther-Lair.com is the website. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com is the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. And have a great Wednesday. We'll talk to you tonight on the live stream, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.